Welcome, Fist for Life Mixed Martial Arts students and members to Cinco de Mayo, May the 5th. It is Tuesday, another day of home training. Excited to be with you today. Continuing to focus on our wrestling and grappling skills, earth basics, okay? Earth basics. Now today we're gonna focus on what you have to do if you end up in a bottom position. Remember, we talked about the distinction between wrestling and grappling, and how in wrestling, being on top is the focus, where you have a dominant position because you have an advantage where you can cause more damage. Well, that being said, if we end up on the bottom, we want to be able to strategically be able to fight our way back to our feet and be able to get up, right? Either to escape or to fight back. So once again, folks, today we're going to focus on basic movements, putting to use our basic techniques of the hip bump, in addition with a few other techniques that transitioning that are going to help you to be able to fight to get onto your feet and wrestle in self-defense. Getting started with our drill today, we're starting with the basic fundamental movement of the hip bump, okay? The hip bump, one of our very basic earth fundamental basic mobility movements that we teach for beginners. But whether you're a beginner or advanced alike, the hip bump is critical. It is a critical technique and a critical technique to get really strong with if you're gonna ever defend yourself if you're on the bottom. If you ever wanna fight your way to a top position or fight to get out from underneath, imagine having a full body weight on top of you and all that pressure, and what you have to do in order to get out is be able to create space and move your hips and body at the same time. And that's what we're gonna be learning today. We're gonna be practicing our hip bumps combined with a few other movements that allow us to get onto our belly, get onto our knees, and fight our way back to our feet. Now, drill number one, we're starting with just the basic hip bump. You're gonna do 3 1-minute rounds of each drill, okay? So starting with the first one is just a standard basic hip bump. Let's get into those details. Getting into our hip bump position, getting onto our back. Imagine somebody's on top. Now, if you're gonna add to the drill, you can add some weight, add a 10-pound disc if you got some weights at home, or a heavy bag. If you've got a small 60, 80-pound heavy bag, you can put that on top of you and work it that way, or just use body weight, because for 1 minute, it's gonna be tough. We wanna make sure the details where you have a wide base with your feet and you bring your heels as close to your bottom as possible. As I extend my hips and push my hips up, I want to make sure I push as far up as I can, bringing my heels off the mat and then back down. Making an explosive movement. Boom, hip bump, and then back down. Hip bump, hold for a second, and then bring it back down. Hip bump, hold, and then bring it back down. 3 1-minute rounds of hip bumps. Just basic hip bump to get your drill started for today. Next, drill number 2, utilizing our hip bumps. We're gonna add a sweeping motion. And what we mean by sweeping motion is I'm gonna use my shoulder and arm to push through or sweep through that top space. Imagining somebody's postured on top or even in a side control position on top, where I'm pushing and sweeping across my chest, sweeping them off of me, okay? So adding to our hip bump motion, right, we're going to hip bump, and then sweeping, reaching over the top of your head on the opposite side of the shoulder. So I'm using my right arm over the leftover shoulder, touch the mat, and then come back down. Notice I keep my hips up off the mat. Hip bump, sweeping motion, touch, and back down. Hip bump, sweep, touch. Hip bump, sweep, touch, right? Hip bump, sweep, and touch. Hip bump, sweep, and touch. That is drill number 2. 3 1-minute rounds, hip bump, sweep. All right, folks, drill number 3. Adding to the hip bump now, we're gonna focus on threading our foot through so that we can turn over from being on our back to getting onto our belly, okay? Because that's gonna allow us to start to execute and get onto our knees. So the way we're gonna work that is just like this. Hip bump, and then let's say I'm gonna work my right side. I'm gonna thread my right foot underneath my left, and then boom, just twisting right onto my belly, okay? Starting once again, doing the left side. Hip bump, left foot, thread through, boom, onto your belly. Again, hip bump, thread. hip bump, thread. Okay? Pretty simple drill, maybe new for some of you. Hip bump, thread. So how I threaded my foot through there. Hip bump, thread. And just flip onto your belly. That is drill number 3. Do 3 1-minute rounds. All right, folks, our 4th and final drill for today, we're gonna add our shrimp to the hip bump. Again, imagine somebody's on top of you. This is an excellent technique where you're going to hip bump and then immediately shrimp those hips getting out from underneath, right? Now you moved out of the space where you once were, creating space. Once again, hip bump, shrimp, reset. Hip bump, shrimp, reset. For some of you who are new, you may have to review our shrimps. We did that last month. Be sure and go back on the links to find it. If you need help, just tag me if you want to. If you need a reference, and I make sure you get that video. But that's going to be our 4th and final drill: hip bump shrimps. 3 1-minute rounds to complete your technical training Tuesday, Cinco de Mayo. Thank you very much, folks, for joining us once again. Have a good one. We'll see you tomorrow.